West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Thank you, Scott, for those rousing chords to bring a torch. Jeanette Isabella. And with that, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm not Jeanette, I'm Jean, and I am your welcome reader this morning. So I want to welcome you warmly to this gathering at 62 Orchard Park and to those on Zoom in the world space. The land acknowledgement is something we do every gathering. And what I want to tell you is that West Hill United is located in Treaty 20 and in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. That's 102 years ago. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. It is important to us here at West Hill that we commit to supporting true reconciliation in the present by honoring the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission from 2015, regrettably, few of which actions have been completed to date. But we do invite you to visit the Yellowhead Institute website, which is an Indigenous-led research and education center at Toronto Metropolitan University. This university plays an important role in holding governments accountable, advocating for the rights of Indigenous peoples, and developing models of change that support Indigenous futures. Thank you for listening to that. We now move into the readings, which will introduce Mel, our speaker, to you on the theme of affirming and connection. The first reading is actually, I have to say, we need to have this slide with the instructions as to what I want you to do. I'm going to say, offered as wisdom for the journey after the reading, and you are invited to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is an invitation to participate if you feel moved to do so. First reading. First reading is from a book by Matthew Legg, and the reading is as follows. George Lakey explains the importance of feeling safe. As a gay man, I remember the first time I saw on the door of a campus office a triangle, signifying that this would be a safe place for me. Surrounded by rampant homophobia, I relaxed as I turned the doorknob. Perhaps you can imagine Lakey's feeling of being able to let down his exhausting mental defenses for a while. Many of us know about the constant fear of recalling painful memories or emotions. A safe space can give us the time to recuperate. If we feel deeply unsafe because we might be set off or triggered at any time, it could be really tough to learn or engage constructively with folks whose actions might hurt us. Second reading from George Fox. First reading is from 2024, and the second reading is from 1656. George Fox writes a letter from prison, and he says, "Be patterns, be examples in all countries, places, islands, nations, wherever you go, so that your courage and life may preach among all sorts of people and to them. Then you will come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of good in everyone. Thereby you can be a blessing in them and make the witness of good in them bless you. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
Maybe walk in its light.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome Mel Burns, our speaker this morning. Mel has a background in social work, and she's currently at the thesis stage of a second master's degree with a focus on religion, peace, and justice. Mel has led a wide range of staff, both in case management and programming, for refugees and newcomers to Canada, and in New Zealand, in an Indigenous organization providing support to youth beneficiaries and to young parents. Mel has experience facilitating workshops on a variety of topics related to social work and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Mel believes that all life is created equal and that each human we encounter has the ability to teach us a unique and valuable truth, if only we take the time to pause and pay attention. Mel is a proud member of the queer community, a regular tree hugger, I love that one, a donut connoisseur, not sure how those go together, and a lover of continuous learning. Welcome, Mel, and we look forward to your message this morning.
Thanks, Jean. They go together because they're round. I hug the tree and then I hug the donut and it works together. Good morning. I want to just firstly congratulate you on your Affirm United anniversary. It's such a wonderful milestone to have completed and then to celebrate each year, and that you take the time to do it, I think is incredibly important. And I also want to thank you for offering me the chance to come and spend time with you again. Some of you may remember that I came and spoke in, I think it was March or April, earlier spring of this year. And the fact that I've been invited back is a good sign. Means that it was tolerable in any way. I've had a chance to speak with Joe, your newish leader, over the past few weeks, and hear a little bit about some of the ways you've been exploring this kind of new theme for the weeks of connection. And I was excited that this theme was connected and fell on your Affirm United anniversary Sunday, because I think they go really well together and I think they feed to each other. So given that today is your Affirm anniversary, I wanted to really thought that I would share a little bit about my experience and the thinking about connection as someone who is part of the 2S LGBTQIA community, and perhaps how allied spaces can find new ways to signal safety for us all. So a quick refresher for those of you that I didn't get to meet last time or don't remember. My name is Mel, and I work for Canadian Friends Service Committee. That's how I originally became connected to this church. Canadian Friends Service Committee is the social justice agency of Quakers in Canada. So we work on behalf of Quakers in Canada to do the work of social justice as led by them. I live on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy, specifically at the mouth of the Willistock River, with the big, beautiful river in Menasquik, which is the gathering place of the Wolastoqey people, known by settlers as St. John in New Brunswick. I am the child of immigrants, and I am a second-generation settler on this land. If asked my pronouns, I will generally ask to just have my name used instead. Often when people push a little harder on that, I would say that I identify as agender. And if that's a new term for you, that's no problem. It's a fairly new term in the world. But to me, it means that my gender identity is something that I really want to opt out from entirely. I want to opt out from the whole system. The pronouns don't work for me. The gendered language makes me feel uncomfortable, even if using neutral ones. And I generally just feel like the whole system could use an overhaul. And so I would much rather just be known by my name and have that be what I am associated with whenever possible. I'm also, generally speaking, I would say at least 99% of the time, happily married to a wonderful transhuman who worked in the trades. So yay for more trades folks in there. As you said, it's an incredibly important area of our work. And we have one very excellent small person whose name is Tully and would want you to know that they are almost 4. If I say 3, I get in trouble. They are almost 4. They'll be 4 next month. And our small person, I would say, currently identifies as whatever gender is the most fun in that moment. So whoever's having the most fun, they'll say, well, I'm a boy because we're doing this, or I'm a girl because we're doing this, or I'm going to go over here and do this. So whatever is most convenient to them is how they identify. So we just use neutral pronouns in the meantime until they say anything more conclusive than that. I give you this information that might seem like a lot of information about me, but I'd give it for 2 reasons. And in my introductions, I always try to give a little bit deeper level of information about me. And those reasons are, number one, being as acknowledgement of some of the less common ways I exist in this world. And so perhaps nuance to conversation that we are engaging with in each other, but also as an expression of my own privilege, even within a marginalized community. I have benefited from the marginalization of others as a settler on this land. I have had access to higher education in a way that many other people have not. I also have a co-parent that works, which means we have 2 incomes, which means that I can work in a nonprofit employment and do work that I do in a way that is sustainable and allows me to, which is not something everybody has the privilege of doing. Working for a nonprofit is a privilege in many ways because there's a financial trade-off. So I am here this morning and I want to acknowledge that both because of my privilege and because of the voice I carry as a person with marginalized aspects of my identity. And I like to identify that because all of us probably in some ways have 1 or 2, or maybe just 1, marginalized aspects of our identity, but we also all hold a certain amount of privilege in our identity, depending on which characteristic is at play and which groups we're in. And I think it's okay to name those things and to say them out loud on a regular basis. So, given all of that context about me, you might understand why I spend a lot of time thinking about connection and about safety. I wonder how many people have walked into a business community center or a church or a gym and seen a pride flag displayed. I'm going to guess that probably almost everyone in this room has encountered a pride flag in a business community center, church, and or other place. I'm wondering if anyone is willing to, this is tricky because I know that with sound, to unmute and just say what you see or feel when you see that flag, particularly what you see. This isn't a trick question. I don't require you to have 3 levels of nuance to it, just surface level feeling. When you walk into a building and you see a pride flag, what is your initial internal response? Anyone who's brave.
I'm happy.
Happy.
Welcoming.
There's a sense
inclusive.
of somebody feels included. It's great.
Sigh of relief.
A sigh of relief. That's good. Thank you.
Openness.
Openness. Yeah, that's great. Pride flags are important. Symbols are important. And I think that's really key. And I think like our reading from George Lakey and his story. So George Lakey, for those of you that have not heard his name before, I encourage you to look him up. He is one of my heroes, my personal heroes, and has been a long time activist and speaker in North America on nonviolent resistance and social action. And is, I think, probably about 88 or 89 now, and has been an openly gay man for his entire life pretty well. And so has lived through probably all of the phases that we have gone through. And so as he speaks in that very short little clip of the first time he sees a pink triangle on the door to an academic office, I know him enough to know more of the story as he's walking in to speak to an academic personnel about one of his books. Just that sense of kind of immediately, okay, relief. I'm curious if anyone in the community who didn't speak before, specifically who identifies as gay, bi, or gender diverse, what you see when you walk into particularly maybe a business and you see a pride flag. Do you have any different feelings, or are they similar or the same if anyone is willing to self-identify in that way? Anyone from the queer community willing to speak?
Yeah, it's, as has already been mentioned, the importance of inclusion and feeling at home, and you know, and the other not feeling like you have to explain yourself. So there's a whole level of being present.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm going to admit something difficult and tricky as a queer person of probably a younger generation and a different lived experience. When I walk into a building, particularly I would say a business more than anything else, and I see a pride flag, I don't have as many feelings as I wish I did. Often I see the flag and I go, oh, that's nice. But it's more of a neutral thing because it doesn't actually tell me anymore necessarily if it's a safe place. I think for a long time it did, but I think because of what we know of of the commodification of queer support, it now has become this kind of almost neutral symbol of what we like to call virtue signaling. And so we have this really complicated relationship happening right now within the queer community and the public and allies with how do we know just based on a symbol if this is actually a safe place? And what does a symbol actually mean if it's not followed up by something? And so for many of you may have heard and heard the term virtue signaling before. It's certainly become a more common term in progressive spaces in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. But especially the last 5 years, as celebrations of Pride, particularly of Pride Month, have become more mainstream and have become more adopted by a wider variety of the public and businesses. And so, as a queer person, quite frankly, I don't always, and I'll say I don't always, because I don't want to say I don't ever care, but I don't always care about what you claim to believe or not. I just want to know if I'm safe. I want to know if I'm safe to not have my pronouns assumed, safe to be able to speak about my partner casually without odd looks or follow-up questions when I use the word they, safe not to be asked constantly if my child is a boy or a girl, safe to bring my visibly trans friends out without sideways glances and whispers. I wish that the flag sticker or the rainbow logo during Pride Month meant those things. But often, and more often than not, they don't. This is the problem with virtue signaling and why I think we need to talk instead about safety signaling. So let's start with just a little bit of an overview of from my perspective, what those two things are and the difference. So for me, and what I understand in the queer community, virtue signaling is this act of kind of publicly expressing a moral stance or socially approved opinion, mainly to gain social approval or status. That is its primary function. There's an emphasis on appearing aligned with a moral value rather than actually acting on it. It can be sincere. I want to be clear. It can be from a sincere place, but the term is usually used critically to imply a kind of performative morality. That's kind of when someone is accused of virtue signaling, usually it's not a positive thing. Usually it's an indictment. And examples can include things like posting a moral statement online, but with no further action or commitment. So reposting a meme or a, save the children sort of thing, but then not actually doing any work to save those very children. It also can be done by displaying our values, primarily to be seen as good or correct. So sometimes organizations will have value statements up on the wall, but if you know them or you get to know the staff or you talk to anybody a layer deeper, it doesn't seem like they're actually abiding by those values. They're just a really nice picture on the wall. Also taking positions that cost nothing and risk nothing. So organizations are very happy often to throw up a pride flag during the month of June because it's socially acceptable now to do so and get that support and that check mark. But actually supporting their staff members and their supporters to actually do work and give back to queer charities and things like that is not actually followed up on. And it's a psychological function. It's actually not uncommon for us to want to feel like we are part of something good. What signaling does is it tells us that we're part of an in-group, right? We're part of a group and we're signaling to other members of that group, hey, I'm part of you and I'm accepted here. Also, it can be a status thing. Sometimes it can help us establish a sense of status in a group, especially if we're in a space that's progressive, and we want to make sure that we are seen as aligned and that we have something to add to that space. But it also serves what I find the most common is this identity shaping function. It allows us to say to ourselves, I am the kind of person who blank. I am the kind of person who supports gay people. I am the kind of person who gives money to charity. I am the kind of person who is against war. It allows us to shape our own identity. And that is where virtue signaling isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's an important step in many ways for us to self-identify as what kind of person are we? What becomes difficult is what happens afterwards. When we make the statement, I am the kind of person who blank, what do we follow up with that? What's the add-on? And then I do this. And so this is what results as that when I say I'm that kind of person. So alternatively, what I'd like us to think about this morning and partly is safety signaling. Safety signaling is not a term that I've heard widely. I won't say I coined the term because I think we're all a combination of many things we've heard. I have not seen it in many other places, but I'd like to think of safety signaling as communication designed to show that a person, space, or interaction is psychologically safe and that they are not seen as a threat socially, emotionally, or physically. It's less about the look how good I am or this is who I identify. It's less about the me statement and more about you can be at peace here. It's a statement that says not about who I am, but how I see the person in front of me. It's a you statement. You are safe here. You can be at peace here. And so my focus then is less on about how I identify and more about how the person in front of me feels. So examples of this can be things like how we clarify our interactions to avoid harm, or clarify our intentions. So when we're having a conversation and we clarify our intentions and we say, you know what, I don't want to cause harm in here. So please tell me if I'm doing something out of the ordinary or if I'm doing something that's harmful to you. It's about acknowledging power dynamics. This is a sign of safety signaling. So when I introduce myself and I acknowledge the levels of privilege that I hold and the ways that I also hold marginalized identities, that's me acknowledging that even within myself, there is power dynamics at play. The aspects of my identity can sometimes be at war with each other, and that in not all settings am I the one that is marginalized. In many, many settings, I am the one with power, and I have to be aware of that and name that out loud and not be scared to do so. It can also be using inclusive language so others know that they belong. They don't belong. We use language so people know that they belong. So an example of that is when I speak about my partner, or I use the words they and them as casually in a statement, or talk about my child. That isn't always necessarily putting them on the spot and saying, what are your pronouns? Instead, I'm just incorporating inclusive language into my conversation and the things that I say, which can be a more subtle and also a safer way to signal to people, hey, this is normal, and this is a space where we use this kind of language, and you can opt in or out, or you can identify however you like when you're comfortable to do so. Another example is about stating boundaries and consent norms, right? Safe spaces require boundaries and they require consent. And so when we make sure that those are stated at the very beginning of our conversations or the interactions with people, especially when they come up to play, this can be really helpful. When I facilitate a workshop, I'll often tell people right at the very beginning when we go through kind of the overview of how the workshop's going to go and some things we're going to agree to together. I'll often say, if things get a little bit too rowdy and emotions get too high, I will call for a stop. And if someone in the room is unable to stop, then I will ask that person to leave. And I need us to all agree to that here right now, that is what's going to happen. And we will carry on with each other and that we will make sure that this place is safe. That is stating a boundary right at the very beginning and also asking for everyone to consent to that boundary from the beginning. That creates a space that people know what's coming and they know what the consequence is if they break that. That gives people, we do this with kids all the time, right? I have a toddler. We talk with our toddler and we say, this is what happens. We are going to put on our boots and we are going to leave the house. And if you can't do that, then this is what the alternative is. And they have an opportunity to jump into that and say yes or no accordingly. Well, they don't always get to say no, but we try to make space for that. Sometimes they just have to leave the house with us. But in general, we try whenever possible to give them an opportunity to consent and to understand what the boundary is going to be. And then lastly, one of the things that I really like about the idea of creating a safety signaling is one of the ways we can do that is by offering repair after harm. This is really important. We are going to make mistakes. All of us as humans, we do that. We're going to get a pronoun wrong. We're going to slip up in our language use. Something is going to happen and we are going to be imperfect in an interaction. That's okay. What matters is what happens afterwards. The offer for repair is incredibly important. How are we repairing the harms that we've done? You talked about this in your opening around being a community that's dedicated to reconciliation and to the 94 calls to action. Being dedicated to that and to working on that and reminding yourself of that is offering repair after harm in a systemic level. And in a personal level, when you're engaging with family members or friends or members of the community, offering repair after harm can be an apology, starting with an apology. So sorry. I'll do better next time. So sorry. Is there anything I can do to practice this on my own? Engaging. We sing a song in our household, the Daniel Tiger. For those of you that have toddlers or grandkids of that age, there's a show called Daniel Tiger that is built off of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That's a kind of a follow-up kids show to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood run by his son. And they sing a little song. They say, saying I'm sorry is the first step. Then how can I help? And we sing that a lot in our household because we have a toddler, and a reminder that apologies are important and definitely the first step, but we have to offer repair. How can I help? What can I do to fix this? And that is a really important second part, offering repair after harm openly, freely, and without pressure. Safety signaling offers a different kind of psychological functioning, right? When we talked about virtue signaling as offering a sense of I statements, I am the kind of person who does this, I am part of this in-group, I am doing these sorts of things. Psychological safety and safety signaling for psychologically offers a different set. One, it offers the person across from you the operation of regulation of their nervous system in the social interaction. It helps restore trust, perhaps, where power dynamics at play have not been helpful. It creates the conditions of learning and risk-taking. I think that's really important. That creating safety signaling means that we have to have conditions for learning and risk-taking within ourselves. Our brain has to be prepared that part of learning is getting it wrong and taking a risk and then repairing afterwards. It also protects this marginalized identities from what might otherwise be a traumatic interaction. It puts them in a place where they know they get to choose in this moment, that they are, one, hopefully safe, that you are inviting them. When we talked about language, like using our pronouns and using partner and using various kind of coded wording to let them know that this is a place where they can engage, it still gives them the opportunity to consent to that or not. It doesn't force them to self-identify. It doesn't say, you're not asking specific gendered comments, particularly with gender diverse folks. This is an important one. Sometimes it's great to ask pronouns. Sometimes it's just better to say, how would you like to be referred to? That's an even better way than saying, what are your pronouns? Because that says people like me who would rather opt out of that system all entirely can do so. And also, sometimes trans people are not ready to be out in every conversation. Sometimes they're not there yet. And so that gives them the opportunity to choose in that moment without feeling a pressure to out themselves of something specifically. And so you're just giving them the space to say, who are you? And you get to choose how you are in this space. And I'm going to make room for that no matter what you choose. Where virtue signaling tends to use this kind of morality for status, safety signaling uses care for connection. It's all about your connection theme. Safety signaling is about making space for connection and doing so in a careful and caring way. It's hard, though, because as I said earlier on, these things are hard to judge on the surface. What to George Lakey in the early 70s, a pink triangle meant may not mean the same thing in 2025 on another space. they can look the same. And so how do we know the difference? Both of them can look like public statements of values. Both of them can look like symbolic gestures. All of these things are important. Both of them can look like aligned language. I support blank. Both of them can look like inclusion markers, like flags and pronouns and land acknowledgements. And both can include these kind of social cues of belonging. The difference, as I hope you're hearing, is in the intent, the context, and the relationship. Oh, relationships. Everything comes back to that when we talk about connection, doesn't it? It always comes back to the relationship you're having with the person in front of you. And so rather than just a surface behavior. So example of that is a business can add pronouns in its email signature. And this could be performative, just virtue signaling, or it could be genuinely designed to make trans employees feel safer. Or it could be both. Could be both of those things. It's a bit performative, but as a result, the trans person does feel a little bit safer. Intent matters, but also how the signal is received. This is a really important one. You may have the best intentions with your signaling, but if the person across from you who you're attempting to make feel safe doesn't, then it's not working. And it means that we have to try again, right? It's not always easy to tell, but it is important to kind of self-reflect on that. If the person across from you, for whatever reason, still doesn't feel safe, then whatever signaling we're doing is not enough, and there needs to be depth of relationship that follows it. So why does it matter so much? Well, this is Affirm Sunday for you guys. This is your Affirm anniversary. So when we think about what I think your church wants to be, which is trauma-informed, equity-based, and psychologically informed, when I read about you guys and I listen to your things, that seems like the things that you want to be as a faith community. People need cues that disagreement won't lead to punishment. That's an important thing. You can disagree, but you won't be punished for disagreeing as long as we do so in a respectful manner. Identity won't lead to ridicule, so however you identify is not going to result in being the butt of a joke, right? That mistakes can be repaired and not weaponized. This is so important in a faith community and in any relationship space. Mistakes can be repaired and not weaponized. We can make mistakes, we can repair those mistakes, and they won't be used against us later on. The repair part of that is an important thing. When people keep making the same mistake over and over and over again and not doing a quality of repair, that means that it may not be a mistake any longer. And so I don't want to continue a pattern of harm by saying that it won't be weaponized. But we can still hold people accountable and hold a boundary without weaponizing, right? Weaponizing is a very specific approach to taking something that somebody's done and twisting it so that it can be used to hurt them. Instead, we can use it as a defense. We can say, oh, this person has a pattern of hurting me in this way. And so I am not going to hurt them back, but I'm also going to put some protection in place. I'm going to set a boundary so that I am not harmed. I can protect myself from harm without harming somebody else in the process. And that is hard. It's really hard to do, but it is possible. It is absolutely possible. I think also that in these kind of spaces that I think your church wants to create or that your faith community wants to create, it's important that people know that speaking up won't cost dignity. People won't lose their dignity for speaking about something that may be uncomfortable or different from what others are feeling and thinking. It also requires that power holders, people with privilege, are self-aware. So again, going back to my opening, this is a practice that we engage in, and it's a great practice for churches that are and faith communities that are wanting to be trauma-informed and equity-based and affirming, that we are regularly and without shame naming and identify the aspects of our marginalization and our privilege. Privilege isn't something to be ashamed of. I think that's something that we've gotten wrong sometimes as a society, is we've shifted people to making people feel bad about something that they have no control over. Privilege The definition of privilege is that it's unearned. You did nothing to earn the skin color that you have. You did nothing to earn the gender identity that you have. You did nothing to earn the person that you love and the way that you love. Those are just parts of who you are. And so no more should you feel shame from having one that is in a position of slightly more privilege than someone who is in a position of marginalization. Shame does not belong in either of those directions, but we can still acknowledge that as just a part of us. I have white skin. My families are immigrants. We are settlers on this land. I don't have to feel ashamed of that, but I do have to recognize that that puts me in a different position and that requires some action from me sometimes. This is really the foundation of creating productive conflict and innovation in organizations and spaces. Safety signaling can show up through a lot of different things, and we talked a few of them, but I think the 4 ones that I want you to try and remember is safety signaling shows up in what we call meta communication, which is something to the effect of, if I misunderstand, please correct me. It's acknowledging that within our communication loop, there's a space to go a layer deeper and say, I am speaking, but I recognize that may not be understood. And so I'm open to correction. Meta communication. 2, humility. I'm still learning here. Safety signaling shows up by that statement and by practicing that in our everyday life. I'm still learning here. 3, safety signaling shows up through, again, repair, a focus on repair. That seems to have caused you harm. I'm sorry. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it is a great phrase, and it's one that is widely underused in our society, I think. Let's talk about it. That puts us together and says this is something that this is a we moment, a we approaching the problem moment, not me approaching you or you being the problem or across from us. It's a we moment. Let's talk about it. Let's work together. And then number 4, as I said, boundaries. I want to stop and make sure this feels okay. It's a great statement. When we're talking with somebody about something sensitive, whether it's politics or whether it's gender identity, whether it's faith beliefs, anything that comes up as sensitive, stopping on a regular basis and just saying that out loud. I want to stop and make sure this feels okay. It's a great way to signal safety to somebody because it gives them the opportunity to, without having to say, I need to stop you here, or walk away or get defensive, that you are stopping yourself and saying, hey, you know what? We're venturing into a tricky topic. I'm going to stop for a second and make sure that you're still okay and we're still okay and we can continue this conversation. I want to stop and make sure that this feels okay. It's a great statement. This is why members of non-marginalized groups and allies have to be willing to do this kind of deep work, to look critically at their own actions and to make sure that they're actually creating and signaling safety. It's rarely an easy, yes, we are. When I ask a church community or a faith community, do you think you're a safe space? If they answer too quickly, yeah. I go, oh, okay, that's a sign actually that we're not doing that deeper work because you want to be able to answer that right away, but good quality signaling means that you should actually have a pause every time someone asks you that question and do some reflection. Being too quick to assume that our actions are working is usually a sign that they may not be actually. And so looking deeper is something that needs to happen. It's not a question that gets answered once, forever. Like when you received your Affirm designation through the United Church. That was a question that was answered once, but then every year you have to ask yourself that same question on today, an anniversary. I often get teased by my colleagues because my partner and I have a practice of, on our anniversary every year, jokingly calling it an annual performance review. So we have our annual performance review on our anniversary every year. And we ask ourselves the same 3 questions every year. We've done this for 13 years now. And we ask ourselves, what is something that I am doing that you really love and want me to continue to do for the rest of the year? Continue doing? What is something that you're struggling with that I'm doing and that I need to work on in the next year? And then what is your favorite part of our relationship together? We ask the same 3 questions every year. And that's an act of doing what we're talking about, not assuming that every year everything's going smoothly and that our relationship and our marriage is, yep, of course we're going to stay married. It's reminding ourselves every year that actually we have things to work on and we need to talk. It also takes the sting out of those conversations because we know they're coming. It's not It's not like in the moment I'm going to attack you, or I'm feeling really emotional about this, or it's really upsetting. It's this moment of, we know this is coming. We can kind of joke about it a little bit. It has some lightheartedness. And then at the end of the conversation, we always say, so should we do this again next year? And we look at each other, and so far we've always said, yeah, let's do it. And we carry on. And that's how we end the conversation every time. And it's fun and it's lighthearted, but it also is that continual reminder of, we are celebrating an anniversary, and just like you are celebrating your Affirm anniversary, that anniversary actually is in a time of not just celebration, but also deep reflection. It's a question that we are re-asking ourselves. Are we prepared today, as prepared today as we were prepared the first time we received this designation, to be able to say we are actively working to create safer spaces for folks in our church and in our community? I think it's also remembering that, as I said before, not beating ourselves up about virtue signaling. I think sometimes it can be too harshly used and against people. The concepts coexist, and people can be on a journey from one to another. And actually, having a sense of self-identity is the first step, no matter what. We have to be able to see ourselves as the kind of person who does good things to do good things. There's a lot of psychology that affirms this. We have to start with a sense of, I am a person that can do things, before we can actually do them. If we don't see ourselves that way, we're going to fail regularly. And so not all signaling is fake, right? Acting publicly is part of the work, especially as allies. You do need to act publicly. It's part of the work of advocacy. And symbolic gestures do open doors sometimes for real action. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes that's the start of the ability to engage in real action. Saying the right thing is the first step to doing the right thing, right? We have to align our actions with our words a lot of the time. And sometimes saying it out loud can be the first step to doing it. And marginalized people do use signaling also within ourselves as safety creation in our own groups. So we do actually signal to each other. We do have our little pride symbols and flags and stuff like that we wear in our pins. It's usually quieter, but it does happen when we have our own systems of signaling. And so signaling isn't bad. It's something that's required. It just has to come with the next step. I am the kind of person who does things, and therefore here's what I'm doing. There's a second part of that statement. It can't just end at, I'm the kind of person who does it. I actually have to do it. But safety signaling is a relational skill. This is not something that you're good at immediately. Some people are better at it naturally because we all have different levels of natural ability in the relational space, but it's a skill. It's something you practice. It's something you build. And it's all about connection. Again, hence the tie into your theme of these last few weeks. So at this point, thank you. I'm getting a time signal. I'm going to wrap up because a few of you probably have heard that there was two quotes that we started with. One was from George Leckie and Matthew Legg. There also was a quote from George Fox, and this is how I want to kind of wrap up our conversation. And I'm going to read it again because I think it's important, and you might be wondering how it connects. And so, as a queer person and a person of other types of immense privilege, I draw my inspiration for how to facilitate connections in safety by using the aspects of this quote. So the quote again is, be patterns, be examples in all countries, places, islands, nations, wherever you go, so that your carriage in life may preach or speak amongst all sorts of people and to them. Then you will come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of God or good in everyone. Thereby, you can be a blessing in them and make the witness of good in them bless you. Two things to note in this. Number one, notice that George Fox says your carriage and life do the speaking, not your words. He does not say you will speak to the world and they will believe you. He says your carriage and your life will do the speaking. This is key in building your connections that signal safety instead of just virtue. Excuse me. Your presence, your attitude, and your life do way more speaking than your willingness to post a flag. One sec. Marginalized folks are paying attention to far more than you think when we see the flag. We see the flag and we go, that's nice. And then we look for the next thing. The flag is not where it ends. And second, I am quite literally daily challenged by the second half of the quote. You see, Quakers, and George Fox specifically, who was known as one of the founders of Quakerism, believed wholeheartedly that every single person on this planet had that of God or good or spirit, however you wish to speak of the higher power, in them. And he lays out such a simple and terrible challenge for our lives: to look and to find that good in every single person we encounter. And even more difficult, to allow that image of good to bless us. What if every day you woke up and your only job for the day was to do that? To look for the good in every single person we encounter and allow that image of good to be a blessing to you. Could you do that? Would you do that? Because remember, everyone means everyone, even presidents south of the border, and IDF troops, and billionaires, and pedophiles, and. Finding that of God or good in every person in no way requires us to diminish or the presence of bad either. But it does require us to do more digging than we would perhaps feel comfortable or prefer to do, especially when looking at those folks I just mentioned. It's one thing to say, yeah, of course I can see that of God in my local trans neighbor. It's really hard to say that about some other folks, particularly in progressive communities that are struggling. I want to say that this practice, more than any other in my life, has brought me the most discomfort and also the most joy than anything. It has irrevocably changed how I seek to safety signal and build connection with people, because I have to be working hard to ensure that my carriage and life are telling the same story that my public statements and words are. And I have to be willing to face the feedback and the discomfort when they don't, even when I have the best intentions. I also have to be willing to do the hard work with the person in front of me who may also not be whose carriage in life may not be speaking what I wish it to. And I have to look for the good. And I have to live with the fact that it is part of my job to work through that and to hold accountable people for bad inactions, absolutely, but to maintain the sense of dignity of life that is within them all. So I want to close with a couple of questions on this anniversary Sunday of yours to ponder and to think about in the coming weeks. And the first one is, how are you in your faith community signaling safety to those outside of it? What are the uncomfortable questions you may need to ask yourselves about this? And the second one is, how could the practice of answering that of good in everyone and letting it bless you transform the way you build connections with those outside of your normal spheres? What could a life lived with that as its baseline goal do to this world? Thank you for listening this morning.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.